The squirrel was magic!
Beware your human heart. This is a Diabolical Index for Monday, December 3rd, 2018, where the page of the uncanny reside. This is Corey Dawson. I would say as always, but I've been out for a pretty long hiatus. So I think I should probably say back again. Corey Dawson back again for the Diabolical Index for this Monday. And I decided to call this episode 0. This is going to be more of a conversational type thing and just kind of shoot the breeze about what I've been into and do some shout outs for some people and talk about some books I've been reading lately. So I'll start with the shout outs, and I couldn't be more happy to have touched base with these two ladies. It's Sarah and Jasmine from the Bitches of Horror podcast. It is completely fantastic. They do a great job. I was talking to them the other day, and hey, Ashley. Oh yeah, Jennifer. I mean, would it like I said before? Would it really be Magic Squirrel if we were ever on time? But I mean, especially now. But the Bitches of Horror podcast. They I don't know. They're definitely in the double digits when it comes to episode wise, but they've completely opened my eyes to so many movies that I was totally unaware of, and they are across the pond. They are nowhere near the United States, but it's fantastic. Actually, they're in a movie called Create Your Killer that's coming out pretty soon. I think that the crowdfunding has ended, but you may want to check that out at the same time. Create Your Killer. Definitely check that out. See how you can help them out. And Bitches of Horror, seriously, definitely check them out. There are so many objective and subjective comments. They managed to go over multiple movies in a half an hour. I don't know how they manage it, but usually spoiler free. There's analyses and their own opinions, which is good. When someone can actually tell you that they like something and then tell you why through a bit of analysis, it's always good, because usually you kind of get one or the other most of the time. So definitely check them out. Also, I'm not so sure if I had mentioned, I may have not have come back yet when I met these folks, but Dirt Candy Productions, Northern Indiana, definitely some of the coolest people I've ever met. They had a sequel come out at the Midwest Horror Fest this year, which was a complete blast. Actually, one of the ladies, I think her name is Sarah Gierski, one of the ladies from Bitches of Horror, she starred in one, and I can't remember the name right now. I was calling it Wounded. I think that may have been a translation of the name, may have been Wounded. I can't remember off the top of my head. Or it's like Rogsad or something like that. But she was in one of those. But the Dirt Candy Productions movie was called She Was So Pretty 2. She Was So Pretty 2. Be Good for Goodness Sake. And it was a rare experience, because usually when you start with the sequel first, you're kind of a babe in the woods. You don't know exactly what's going on. You don't know who the characters are, what the history has been. And in this case, at the Midwest Horror Fest, I definitely, it was my number one favorite movie. It's tough. It's tough. There were a couple of really, really super close runner-ups, so it's kind of dangerous for me to say, but I'd say I would have to say that She Was So Pretty 2, Be Good for Goodness Sake, was wonderful. They introduced, in my opinion, one of the best new, what do I even call him? It's so difficult to call him a villain. His name is Alfie, and he usually goes by his full three title name, and I think he might be the third. It's something like Alfred something the third, but he goes by Alfie, and he's this kind of hulking, what did I call it? I had put something up about the movie once upon a time, and I think I called him Kilpolium Dynamite, or something. That's kind of what he gave me the impression. He kind of wore thrift store clothes, but he's gigantic. He's got long hair, but he's got kind of like the thick glasses, and he's got this incredibly creepy stare. But the cinematography and the subject matter and the story and the pacing and just everything was just fantastic. I met Brooklyn, Jerry, and Justin from Dirt Candy, and we ended up becoming total buds like instantly. They're some of the most genuine people I've ever met. So definitely look around for. I ended up buying. I got a limited edition VHS of She Was So Pretty 1, and it was a blast coming home and seeing the one that preceded the one I had seen at Midwest Horror Fest. So I can't spread around enough about them. They've got a compilation. I guess you call it a portmanteau movie, kind of like in Creep Show vein or VHS vein, or I guess Trick or Treat type of thing, where they're calling it Tales from the Creep, and the titular creep is going to be Alfie, and I guess he'll kind of be walking behind the scenes in a lot of the stories that happen there, like Rod Serling or Alfred Hitchcock, and I cannot wait for that to get started. My voice might sound funny. I think my throat's a little thick right now. I don't know. I've been coughing, and I got some water handy, but it's running out fast, so that might be part of that. But the second, or I guess it'd be the third now. The third group of people I'd like to shout out would be the people behind Bong of the Living Dead, which was probably my second really, really super close runner-up pick from the Midwest Horror Fest 2018. Daniel and Tiffany. I met up with them after the show, and I have to say it was one of those movies that completely surprises you, because the name is really provocative, and it seems like it's gonna be a lot of fun, but it may not have a whole lot of substance to it, and I was completely wrong. Bong the Living Dead was completely hilarious. It had tons of heart. The gore, it didn't take a whole lot of gore because there was so much story, and The impact was great. They had some the really light on the CG, but what they used was used sparingly and really in a lot of great ways. There were a couple of parts in the movie where it kind of took you for a turn because you would think it was over and then something would happen, but not in a bad way, not in like a Return of the King type way where it seemed like it ends 1,000 times. No, I'm not doing my Batman voice. What's happening? Uh-oh.
1 second.
Tech involvement. Does not exist. It's one of those things. It's a figment of your imagination. So. So somehow he had he had me. He had the mic set on Dr. Claw, I guess. Okay, cool. Well, shit. So I'm like, yeah, honey, my I've got my voice is pretty raspy because I need some water. No, it sounds like it's coming from the bowels of hell. Okay.
I don't know why it was doing.
Hi, Lucy. Hey, honey. It's way past your bedtime, baby. Okay. So, without too much further ado, hopefully I shouted those guys out enough. Definitely check them out. The Dirt Candy, Bong of the Living Dead, and the Bitches of Horror. Give them all your money, all your attention. They're fantastic. You're going to find, especially on Bitches of Horror, you're going to find so many movies that you hadn't heard of, and so many that you're going to completely agree with them on, and some that you won't so much. But I have to say, I don't think I've enjoyed listening to so many people that I disagree with in some ways on some things. I think it may have been with Thing from Another World. They were talking about how old it seemed and how dated it was, and that's definitely one of my favorite movies. It's got some of the best dialogue ever. It's almost like a comedic play with a gigantic plant-based alien in it. But Chris, what's up, man? How you doing? Thanks for stopping by the Diabolical Index for its episode 0 after 3,000 years in the void. So anyhow, I wanted, before I forgot, I've been putting up posts today talking about different things to look out for something mysterious, and in that case, I wanted to, if Andrew would be so kind as to put the email address up on the screen somewhere. I have been toying around with a diabolical hunt, and what that is you probably noticed that there's all kinds of bric-a-brac laying around everywhere, and if you dare to look around and see if you can't find something that spells out a definite story or book to you, if you could go to the Diabolically Hunting at mail.com and put the name of the story that you come up with from what I've provided. And it's not all going to work. There are some things that definitely seem like they're in the picture, and some things that aren't, and they could be something on my person, something on the table, something behind me, whatever. It could all be integral, and it could all be absurd, except for one piece. So if you can think of a story or book that can come out of any of the stuff that you see before you, or feel free to scrutinize, because I don't make a whole lot of things easy. But definitely go to Diabolically Hunting at mail.com, and the story or book that you come up with, put the name of it as the password in no caps, and you might be able to get in there and get a secret message in the inbox. So good luck, happy hunting. And this whole thing, I was thinking earlier, and of course, Lucy commented earlier, and
she's my little one, and we go through riddles all the time. And there was a pretty good one that came up about all a group of children can't say my name, and that's why I have black eyes. So I have 6 windows to look out of, and sometimes it snows, so I can see better through some than others, and there are many corners, but I can roll away if I'm lucky. Something like that. So I thought that was a weird one, and it took me a while to get that one, but I don't know. I digress. Anyways, if this is the first time tuning into the Diabolical Index, this is a book podcast. Apparently Lucy's getting a big charge out of my shout-outs, but there are a lot of people to thank. I mean, there are so many people doing good work now, really thoughtful work, interesting work outside of the gigantic Hollywood machine, and it's really super important to support those people, especially, I'm kind of mentioned them in passing, but Midwest Horror Fest, Midwest Action Fest, I was part of the judging of the Horror Fest and the Action Fest over the last year and a half. The Action Fest is coming up on its 2nd year, spring, summer 2019. So definitely check that out. There are some fantastic ones in there, and I'm kind of putting my 2 cents in about them creating a Midwest Animation Fest, because some of the animated films that have come in have been just like fantastic, but I'm sure they have enough to do. It's HM&M Productions, Garage House Studios, and they recently part of them, and actually part of the production crew. Brooklyn does the writing and directing for the She Was So Pretty series, and Jerry and Justin were there from She Was So Pretty 1 and 2, and they were all out with Heidi Moore from Kill Dolly Kill, and the man, Troma's best, I can't remember his name right now. Who started Troma? Ah, damn it, Kaufman. He was there also. So definitely keep an eye out for these people, because especially now with the technology being the way it is, it's so much easier to express yourself and get that stuff out there. And to be honest, I was really super skeptical about self-publishing for the longest time, and then I've seen that a lot of people I respect have actually been kind of using it as their resume, and people that I thought were kind of I don't know, kind of slumming it. I mean, I guess for a long time I thought that self-publishing was kind of like an easy way to, get stuff out there without having it juried, and I totally, it was a misconception on my part, because what it does, it allows you to kind of get your name and your word out there, especially now, like in the advent of like the YouTube culture. Your career can be made and broken just like a matter of seconds, because you kind of have to get something out there as soon as you can. And I'm a total believer in collective consciousness. If you come up with an idea, you better do it fast, because the rock's going to hit the ether and it's going to cause a vibration. Someone somewhere is going to put out your idea in one shape or another, slightly different, but you'll see it later and kick yourself for not having done anything about it. But basically, one of the major reasons why I've been away for a while is I had a crushing death in the family, and it was difficult to kind of get motivated and get out of my shell for a little while. And my mind kind of went back to the past and things that I had shared with Mom and stuff like that, and I ended up coming across. My initial plan was to do an episode on a couple of books that she had read me when I was a little one, and I decided to kind of merge that with this a little bit for a couple of reasons. One of which is I had a lot of trouble finding one of them, but I ended up finding one of the ones that I remember, and is actually a little bit more difficult to find than the other. The one I was thinking about that is a little bit easier to find, but for whatever reason I couldn't find it this time, was Frog and Toad Are Friends. And I remember that completely vividly, her reading that to me, and I was small enough where she could completely wrap her arms around me to hold the book so we could both read it. So that, and you can see how wide I am now. You can imagine how small I must have been then. But the other one that there were tons. There were tons of books that we read, but one of the major ones that I think they just really appealed to me at the time, and I think it may have shaped a lot of the stuff, especially, like considering the little contest for tonight. But you got me a book, Cam? Yeah. The Secret Three by Myrick. It's really, really, really super difficult to find. I had so much trouble trying to find it at a library, and it turned out that I had a ratty copy. This may have actually been the copy that we read. I don't know. It's almost falling apart. But basically, one of the things that I noticed, and maybe it was a coincidence, I'm not sure, or maybe he was just really big at the time, but Arnold, I think it's Lobel. Yeah. Arnold Lobel did the illustrations for this, and turned out that he did the illustrations and wrote the Frog and Toad series. So I don't know if that was just kind of meant to be, or coincidence, or what. But basically, the Secret Three is about this this group of boys who, a couple of them are on an island, and they start finding messages from someone else on the island, and the messages come in code. They're different numerical codes, and I believe there might have been Morse code in there too. But basically, it kind of becomes like this strange treasure hunt, except the treasure that they end up finding ends up being a friend. So it's very, very cool, and they characterize the three of them. I'm trying to remember it's like Matobe or something, but they basically mix all three of their names together to make this kind of battle cry. And I remember thinking, even when I was a kid, that the illustrations really Matobe. It's Matobe. So they mix their names up. Billy, I think it's Billy, Mark, and Tom. So Matobe is what they come up with. But can you book him again? Yep. Let's see. It's kind of like these strange illustrations where it's really colorful, but it doesn't. It kind of doesn't cover up the pages. It's almost transparent as to what else is going on along there, and it may be they were trying to kind of mimic the sand or whatever. But these kids are really funny, and you can tell this was done in, if I had to guess, I'd say early 70s, late 60s, something like that, because, one of them's got kind of like a basket hat on top of his head that he probably wove out of straw or whatever, and they're completely barefoot, and everyone's fishing, and there's a lighthouse keeper and stuff, and it's one of those things where you probably couldn't really write this book again, really. One of their fathers is kind of a beatnik. He's got a kind of like a Van Dyke beard, and he's just painting on the surf, and just the secrets of childhood, the little mysteries, and just absolute limitless wonder of everything. Everything becomes an adventure. Every environment becomes a kingdom, and just the secrets of children. It's really a celebration of that, in the most completely innocent way possible, because sometimes in stories, secrets become lies. And in this case, it's just this friendship that kind of, it doesn't have to be secret. And they probably think it's secret, but everyone knows about it. But at the same time, it's something they share amongst themselves. And it kind of, there's, at one point, it has a little bit of a Castaway quality, because they leave a message in the sand up from the surf. It says, clubs Clubs 118.5, which is part of the code. Friends 118.5 fun. So I don't know if 118.5 means fun or what, but I'm glad I belong to the Secret 3, Matobi. So they basically celebrate just being friends, and I guess they're kind of, I think it's one of those things where it's kind of part and parcel of being separated from civilization by the ocean, and they, strangely enough, they kind of, I mean, I guess it's only kind of an intrinsic thing where it kind of smacks of pirates and that sort of, you know, like the secret handshake and the secret sign, the black spot, and that kind of stuff. But they pass messages by bottle at first, and then they end up writing in the sand. But anyway, there's not much to it. It's a kid's book, but for whatever reason, it stuck with me for so long, and I probably could have drawn the cover if I needed to at one point. But yeah, the binding is completely coming apart. I would love to see if they reprinted this in any kind of fashion. I would love to have one that would last, that would kind of stand the test of time, and I don't know, maybe pass it along to the little ones. But there you go. Secret 3, definitely one that is really, really super important in my heart. So there you go. Okay, so there were a couple of them that, and like that's, you know, the episode 0. This isn't really deep volumes of anything, or classic works or anything like that. But there are some kind of connections. And can you book him again? I almost called this the graphic episode, because there are a lot of illustrated ones that I kind of wanted to go through, and this one is no exception. Richard Sala, I wrote this one called The Hidden, and I made the mistake of putting this in the children's section in the shop, and James Grant, Big Curly, the monster maker of Main Street, he he took a look through it, and anything that has, you know, the kind of wild art he's always zooms in on, and he kind of leafed through it, and in his kind of little sheepish, coy way, he said, "Hey, you may want to look through this thing if you're gonna have it on the kids section, because it is most definitely there are tons of adult situations. Basically, it's after the fall of, well, not the fall of man, but basically civilization has kind of reached this point where it's just chaos in the streets. There's anarchy. There's the living dead. There are creatures that have been stitched back together in some ways. There are mutants, cannibals. No one is safe, and it's kind of like the story that, you know, people probably considering it cliched nowadays, but really there's a kind of a base level when it comes to the stories of survivors banding together, traveling, the hardships of being away from civilization, and you know, no one's there to give you the creature comforts or luxuries of the life that used to be, and they end up coming across these kind of like fatalistic philosophers, like out in the middle of the desert, and they end up living in caves, and they come across ruins of old kind of like give me book him again. This is kind of a study of having to go out of the city due to the streets being overrun by all these different types of creatures. And yeah, actually, no kidding, right? I mean, that's exactly what I thought of it. When you look at the art, it kind of gives you that impression. But with the children's book, and it fooled me. But basically, they have to kind of take to the desert in different places, and they actually run into the person who's behind all of it. And there's some parts that's kind of like Purge-esque, where people have taken advantage of the situation of kind of like the fall of civilization to wear these wild animal masks and to go around and just wreak havoc and just try to, anyone that they see kind of not necessarily flourishing but surviving, it's almost like a human drive to crush them underfoot for even attempting to make something out of their lives after all this has happened. And I mean, there are ogres, there are secret sects of people who have been saved by the people who are behind this mad science. And I don't want to say too much about it, but you've seen kind of like the examples of the art, and it's just wonderful, completely wonderful. When you can find something that gives you kind of like it's like a childlike view of the unknown and the dark corners of the human soul, but from this pure, just there's no subterfuge. Like, it's the pure basic emotions of a situation that's completely honest. What's more honest than when the shackles of obligation and society have fallen away? Could there be a more honest, animalistic community than that? So, but then coupled with the kind of childlike art, where you look at it and it's you're kind of lulled into a false sense of security, and then all of a sudden you see someone getting their throat ripped out. So yeah, Richard Sala, The Hidden, definitely check it out, and basically check out all of Richard Sala's anything, really. This was my first experience with Richard Sala, but so far everything that I've seen is completely beguiling and surprising in a lot of ways. So there you go. Answer your question, Jennifer. This is not on the rack. This is James Grant's book. It was mine. I put it on the shelf. He bought it from me. It became his, and I borrowed it from him. And I haven't given it back yet, and that was weeks ago. So, anyhow, the one that kind of spurred my return to Diabolical Index was one. It's one of those things where I would like to say that I've been preparing for weeks for this, and I haven't. It's been life, and the pre-holiday craze, and getting back to work, and all of those things, and trying to get back to myself. I did no preparation for weeks. What I did do was last night I read a book by an author that has astounded people all over the world for years, decades by now. And to be honest, I've never really experienced Neil Gaiman until last night. And Coraline, I mean, I experienced the movie, and I experienced the book, but it was a long time ago, and I guess I just didn't put that, I didn't link that to him as a writer, and I was kind of out of pocket for the Sandman, the famous Vertigo DC Comics Sandman series, which I actually caught one of the newer Sandman books that's a little bit out of order, and I completely loved it. So I when I saw that, give me the book name again, please. When I saw that Neil Gaiman had written a story about basically the world of Sherlock Holmes, except not. I hesitate to say twisted, because twisted isn't the word for it. I would almost say adapted to the kind of like the flavor, the creatures, and the vistas kind of experienced and imagined by H.P. Lovecraft. It's A Study in Emerald. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been out, but I believe it's won all sorts of awards, and especially any artist that wins the Will Eisner Award is in my cool book, because I love me some Will Eisner. When I discovered Darwin Cook, and he was, for me, he kind of exemplified that that flavor of art. And this is I don't know if it's Raphael Albuquerque. I hesitate to say Albuquerque. If I had to guess, it's probably Albuquerque. But this may be one of the most wonderful graphic novels I've ever read. And especially since it started as a story, and then they adapted it to this with some of the finest art I've ever seen. Oh, whoops. Put a bunch of stickers in there for safekeeping. They got away. That was, yeah, all these stickers I ended up buying at the Midwest Horror Fest. I wish I knew the name of the artist. When I found out the name of the artist, I'll post them so you can look at them. But basically, there's a big push, especially in art now, with different media. It's almost, I mean, comics have been a fine art for a long time, but now especially, it's unbelievable what they've done. I think a good example would be Harrow County, supernatural kind of like secret history of a family in, I believe it's considered like the Deep South, or it's definitely got that flavor to it. And I totally recommend looking up. It's a YouTube video, and it's probably Harrow County cover art. One of those progressive videos where they show it from the blank page until the end result of it, and it is just mind-boggling what the artist does for the covers on that book. And this is no exception. The Study in Emerald art is just fantastic. But besides all of that, the story it completely engrossed me. And I was talking about getting lured into a false sense of security by The Hidden, the Richard Sala book. This is one of those things where you weren't lured into a false sense of security as much as you saw something you recognized and that you deeply loved, and you embraced it, and you didn't catch on. When I was done reading it, I'm always keeping Mel awake. I'm a complete insomniac most of the time. I kind of operate at two speeds. I'm either completely awake, or I am like running on fumes about to fall over. When I was done reading it, I just would not shut up about how glad I was to have been completely fooled by this book. I'm really hesitant to say a whole lot about it, but I had to put it out there for everyone to experience it. Basically, no, Jennifer, to answer your question, no, I haven't read any of the books. I haven't read American Gods, Graveyard Book. I haven't read, and it hurts my heart, really. I haven't read Good Omens. I haven't read a lot. I mean, I'd have to say this, and that one, or that couple Sandman issues that I read, and Leafing Through Coraline a long time ago. I really haven't experienced it, but I have bought a lot of it just recently within the last little while, because I just had an inkling that I had really, really been missing out. And it's a common problem of mine, where if something is completely talked about constantly, loved by millions, everybody's constantly talking about it, I usually kind of wait to give it a shot later, because I know it's always going to be there. But in this case, I feel like I've really done myself a disservice by not checking it out sooner, because A Study in Emerald it begins in anyone who's Sherlockian, anyone, when reading the beginning of this. I mean, because it's supposed to be a play on A Study in Scarlet, and it begins in the same way. And there are things that you completely recognize, and it's done so lovingly, and so it doesn't hit you over the head with it like a really hackneyed like origin story, but it kind of, it takes you to the beginning, and it sets you down in what you've seen before, what you've read before. The art is so fantastic that you're kind of seeing it in a new way. And there's some artistic license that's happened that I think is, in a lot of ways, is for the better. The character design is just fantastic. So you see the gaslit streets of London, and this is Sherlock Holmes's London, and everything is there. And I love, like I said, with the character design, I love what they've done with Lestrade. They've kind of gone for the corpulent with him, almost like, not necessarily bumbling. You don't want him to be a complete idiot, but you do want him to be on the outside of the genius of the detection and all that kind of stuff. Well, you find out that the London that you know and the London that you see is the London you've always seen, and all the characters act as if it's the London you've always seen, but the things that they kind of take for granted, which is wonderful. It's wonderful to see characters take things for granted that they should, because they're completely accustomed to it. And even though you're not, as a reader, it's important to have that distinction. Otherwise, it just seems like they're handing everything to you on a plate, which made it all the more easy for me to kind of fall into the trap. That's what I was saying with Mel. I said, oh my gosh, I totally fell into the trap. I fell into his trap. And I was thinking of it earlier today that back when I was younger, I remember I would go after movies and books with this intense ferocity, where I would be trying to figure out the ending before it happened, trying to figure out who was the betrayer, and all these secret things that the author was trying to keep from me, and Sixth Sense. I was trying to suss that out, and I did 5 minutes or something. Yeah, I remember I wrote down, I was watching it with my girlfriend at the time, and I wrote down what I thought was happening in the first 5 minutes on a piece of paper, and I folded it up and I put it in the kitchen. And I said, after everything's over, I'll let you open it up and see if I'm right. Well, I gave that up. Because I found that I definitely want to try to figure things out along with the movie and all that kind of stuff, but for me, I find there's a lot more enjoyment if you let it happen, if you allow it to come, and you, I've always suspended my disbelief, which shows by what I read and all that stuff, but if you kind of also suspend your analysis, I think is also helpful. And granted, I've had like zillions of debates like after movies are over, but you can process it afterwards. If you experience it when it's happening, you might actually get more out of it than you would have before, just by taking it apart as you're watching it or whatever, which seems strange coming out of my mouth, because I have people coming to me asking for my criticisms all the time. But what I've done is I've tried to kind of hang back and enjoy what I'm seeing. And then, because, when it comes to movies and stuff and books, I almost have like it's almost like a photographic memory for the media, where, I can talk about it hours into the night after it's all done, and as a result, I get kind of pissed off when people kind of leisurely watch something like in the background when they're like cleaning and shit. I can't. If you're binging some television show you've seen 1,000 times or whatever, totally fine. But if it's something like tonight, have you ever heard of Luther? The BBC show with Idris Elba in it? I think it was kind of one of his first things. I've heard for a long time that it was like the coolest thing ever. And it was just, I hadn't tried it yet. and I love Idris Elba and everything he's in. And that's why I'm not seeing The Dark Tower, because
You think it's gonna suck?
yeah. Yes, I think that it's gonna suck, but it's due. I don't want to get too much into this, but like I said, it's episode 0. I don't care. I think it's because when you try to take Lawrence of Arabia and put it into, you know, the space of a Friends episode or something like that, it's just not going to work. You're going to leave out too much stuff. There's too much context, and there's such a vast, rich world of insane imagination that you're trying to distill into a couple of hours. A, it's not going to work. B, it's going to suck. And C, it's going to forget everything that's vital. I mean, over the last couple of years, I've totally agreed with the thing where sometimes it's not the best thing to have a direct adaptation of a book. Jennifer's going off about the Dark Tower. I mean, yeah, I'm sure that we agree, because there's just too much rich tapestry that you're just going to cut off and leave on the cutting room floor. It's not going to work. I had heard rumors that they were going to do a movie to start things off and then have like a Showtime show or like a Netflix show that would lead up and then have another film where, and you could do that. You know, you could have, if there are just like little nettling things in between, but you still don't want to cut them out, but they're not quite grand enough for a movie, then you could kind of figure out what the giant beats are, make those into films, and then do the rest of the kind of like moving from place to place in a show. And that way you wouldn't necessarily, if you're doing it on Netflix, before the great streaming wars is going to happen and who the fuck knows what, you could not necessarily have it rated for movies. And you could do things that you may not be able to do in a movie that you want for wide distribution and stuff. So I'm totally digressing all over the place. What the hell was I even talking about? Oh yeah, the Study in Emerald. Okay, so basically, you're looking at this Britain that you've always known about, and there are things that the characters are totally commonplace because they've been happening for the last 700 years, and that's where the Lovecraftian bent comes into the story. And I super hesitate to say the word Lovecraftian because it's almost a bad word now. It seems like you tack a tentacle on something, all of a sudden it becomes Lovecraftian. Whereas in this case, I think this is the purest form of the term, because you have this history, and it's not as if it comes barging in. We're coming in 700 years later in the 1800s of, you know, what people have experienced for all of those centuries. So it's completely understood that these things are happening. And I was totally fooled. And, you know, it's possible that someone else would read it and kind of like the sleight of hand won't work as well, because they may see it. They may see everything that happens, you know, from a mile away. In my case, I was completely immersed, and when it came to the end, and it wasn't some kind of slam bang twist ending, you know, the dominoes fell one right after the other. I'd say probably midway through the book, things started, and in fact, around that time, I found myself kind of confused. And I was really paying attention, so I was like, did I miss something? And then I just kept reading, and everything fell into place. This is a story where the term falling into place, it was made for this. And Jennifer's saying he's a master, and I have to say that if A Study in Emerald is any sort of indication about Neil Gaiman's mastery of writing a story and having it follow through and having it turn around and be completely unexpected and familiar at the same time, then I'm going back and I'm reading everything I can get my hands on. And especially since, as far as I know, this isn't an old story that he's written. I think it's fairly new. And the Sandman, kind of like the extended Sandman universe stuff that he's doing now, I said I had read a couple of issues of that completely out of context, I think. I'm not sure. But I mean, there are Sandman stories from a decade ago that, in order to completely understand them all the way through, I'm going to have to go back and do that. Hey, Josh, what's up, man? Running Scared Pictures is in the house. Yeah, I am back. And hopefully, with any luck, my next episode won't be quite as slipshod as this one has turned out to be. But I gotta get back in the swing of things and get my feet on the ground again. But yeah, Josh, I don't know if you're aware, but keep an eye out for clues to my little contest. If you go to Diabolically Hunting at mail.com, if anything you see either on me or in the room, if you can think of a story that comes to mind, if you can name that story in no caps and use it as the password to enter Diabolically Hunting at mail.com, you will find a secret message in the inbox for you, and you might get something fun. And if it turns out everything's gonna be shut down tomorrow at noon, so if I have multiple people coming through, then I'll make a post and do some sort of calling out, because hopefully, with any luck, it wasn't quite that obvious. But yeah.
I have my display on.
Oh no. Yeah, Norman Spinrad. Mr. Gully, it's nice to see you back again. I was involved in an eBay auction, and they had something like 30 Spinrad. I mean, it seemed like 30. I think it was a smattering of. It may have been like 10 or 15 Spinrad and a little bit like Harlan Ellison and E. Doc Smith and stuff. So I was totally on board to try to get that auction, and I lost. Because I'm not really super versed in like sniping eBay auctions, so someone came in at the last second and beat me out of it. So with any luck, I'll be able to find some Spinrad here soon. I've been looking for them ever since you mentioned them last time you were on the show. So yeah, Josh, man, it has been too long. But hopefully I've got my head on straight, or at least as straight as it can become. All right, man. Yeah, good to be here, man. It's good to see you, Josh. Thanks for stopping by. Josh DeForge from Running Scared Motion Pictures stopping by. Definitely check out their page. They do a lot for a lot of people. Josh has been putting out a lot of really gracious posts about people's work in bizarro fiction and things like that. He's really supportive and big booster for people doing their own creating and things. It's just better to have bid on Spinrad and lost than never to bid on Spinrad at all. I couldn't agree more. So, yeah, with any luck, I'll be able to get my simoleons out in time and see if I can't. I don't know if I want to get started on the whole eBay sniping thing. I think it'll just become an obsession at some point. But I always tend to take it personally, which is completely stupid. But if someone's trying to get my books and I can't get my books and they get my books, yeah, I get vengeful. But yeah, Studying Emerald, Neil Gaiman. I probably didn't say much, but it's only because I want to put the word out about that, and it's already out. It's not as if like no one knows about it. But I had seen something about it a long time ago, and when we were in when Big Curly and I, James Grant, we were up in the Kokomo, Logansport area. We stopped by Kokomo Comics, and I'm sorry, excuse me, sorry, I apologize. It was Kokomo Toys and Comics Cubed in Kokomo. and I saw a copy of Vestalian Emerald hardback, and I was not going to resist the temptation. So I picked it up, and I couldn't be more happy. The only sadness I feel about this is that it isn't like a gigantic series of 20 Neil Gaiman Sherlock Lovecraft, or even Sherlock mixed up with other things. Oh, one thing I almost forgot to mention. Yeah, another thing it does for kind of like the chapter breaks is this sort of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen-esque ads, like old Victorian ads for tinctures and tonics and different things. And he puts a lot of supernatural classic literature, literary characters in for these ads. And you would think, I think that's he's really Gaiman. You know, people are always saying, "Oh, Gaiman's got this magic, and he's got this, you know, this wonderful thing." And I think that you kind of forget, because when you hear interviews with him and you see him talking and stuff, he seems like a totally humble guy. But at the same time, you see things he's done in here, and it's been done before, but it's wonderful. Like, somehow he's done it in a way that that just totally rings another bell within there. But so, yeah, so that was a really cool way of doing the chapter breaks, because you see like this Victorian ad for Dr. Jekyll's health tonic that'll make you into a new man and all that type of thing. I don't want to go into too much of those. I don't want to give them away, but yeah. So, oh yeah, I got up to Logansport, Mr. Gully. I got up there for the Midwest Horror Fest, and we ended up going to Winnemac, where Garage House Studios is based out of there. We bought a lot of comics there, and we actually recorded a game show there that never made it to air, which is it sucks, because I totally came back from behind to win, and it hasn't made its way to the surface yet. So hopefully, with any luck, it'll end up on a special feature on one of their films or something. I don't even know, but I think that may have been the first appearance of the Diabolical Index T-shirt. Then I can't remember now. Plugging away, but yeah, I've never been to. I don't know if you say Carmel. I'm guessing it's Carmel, Indiana. It's tough. We have a lot of strange pronunciations in southeastern Indiana with Versailles and Milan and all that type of thing. I wouldn't want to presume anything, but I've only been to Connorsville for track meets way, way, way back in the day. But yeah, I think that with any luck, if all the people that I know that are working out of Indiana keep applying their trade, it might end up being a hub for a lot of great creative works. So there you go. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. I wasn't so sure I'd make it to an hour, because I wanted to be really conversational, and Andrew says I'm at 102, so it's probably a good place to wrap it up. Thanks for everyone who showed up, Jennifer and Josh and Mr. Gully. It's one of the, I guess I'm kind of a formal person. If I haven't had personal conversations with someone off the stream, I tend to go for the Mr. and the Miss and all that type of stuff. But thanks Ashley for tuning in. Ashley Zombie. I'm sorry, I totally forget what night she's on. Friday nights. Okay, so yeah, check out Ashley Zombie throughout the week for the Friday the 13th and other live stream games. Definitely check that out. She is a wonderful person, as are all the people on the Magic Squirrel Network. Heckles and Horror, TJ kicking it live tomorrow night, right? Okay, do you know what the theme is tomorrow night?
It's Christmas from here on out.
Christmas from here on out. Chances are he's going to have some kind of weird Santa thong on, for all I know. Who knows?
We're giving away DVDs for sure.
And also, I've been made aware that TJ will be giving away DVDs. I don't think I'm allowed to say what, or they're right.
I mean, they're
all kinds of stuff. All kinds of.
They actually get to pick which one they.
Oh, so are there tiers of stuff you can?
No, it's just like we're gonna have presents and.
Oh, is it like the white elephant thing?
Kind
Picking
of.
presents? Oh my god. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I hate those things.
Well, you don't get to re-pick though.
Oh, you don't? Okay, so all right. So he's saying that it's a gift swap thing for DVDs on Heckles and Horde Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Right? Or whenever. I don't know why I ever put the time. I think that I should probably say. I think I might start. No, you know what? No. If I have to change it to 10, I will. I don't know if that's better. Do you think that's better? I don't know. But tonight was getting back in the swing of things, and you knew we were going to be late anyway. But yeah, thanks for everybody who stopped out. I'm really glad Mel and Lucy stopped by. I know that it's late for them, and I always give her crap for not, at least in my estimation. She says that she's always there. I always, give her crap for not being there. Apparently that she's always there. Always there. So, thanks, Mel. I love you. That's the thing, huh?
Even in spirit.
Even in spirit. She's always looking after me like the Phantom Stranger. I'm sure Mr. Gully knows who that is. But, yeah. It's great to be back. This is probably the most I've spoken since I don't know when. I'm surprised my... So, is like the voice of hell going to be on the beginning? Okay, so anyone who's coming in, I am signing off soon, but anyone coming in late, I'm going to sound like the Supreme Being from Time Bandits in the beginning of this whole thing. I actually turned Mel and Lucy on to Time Bandits last night. Terry Gilliam. Have you seen Time Bandits?
I don't think so.
Oh, no? Oh, man, it's really... Michael Rappaport's in it. It's kind of, except for Warwick Davis, the cast of Time Bandits was probably the greatest cavalcade of like little people in cinema. So like R2-D2, Kenny Baker was there, and I don't think that I can't believe I forgot his name. The guy who was all of the Oompa Loompas in the Willy Wonka remake.
Oh, I know you're talking about.
He's got a really odd name. And I'll probably remember later. But he's not in it. But there are a couple of parts that kind of remind me of Neverending Story.
I never heard of Time Bandits.
Mr. Gully, I had seen Time Bandits, but Mel and Lucy hadn't seen Time Bandits, and Andrew, the tech superstar, has not heard of Time Bandits. And I think that it's no doubt. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, he's like naming off all the people. It is I mean, like I'm mentioning the Time Bandits themselves, but they are totally surrounded. Michael Palin and John Cleese from. I mean, of course it's Terry Gilliam. So there's got to be some Monty Python guys in there. So John Cleese and Michael Palin are in there. John Cleese plays Robin Hood, and it's hilarious. No. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, Andrew hasn't, but I'm sure he will now because we're like browbeating the hell out of him. It's like, you haven't? Oh my God. But David Warner plays one of the funniest mustache. I mean, I think he goes beyond the mustache twirling villain in that. He has this line last night. I laughed my ass off because I've forgotten he had said it. He said something like, because basically, oh yeah, and then George Harrison, there was a song at the end, and I was like, oh, that sounds like George Harrison. And then I remembered that George Harrison, you know who he is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure. But he had a hand in Handmade Films, which made that and a couple other Python things, I think. But he says, and I think they just call him evil or something. Like he's basically like the ultimate evil or whatever, and he lives in the fortress of ultimate darkness and all this stuff. Well, he's almost like kind of a proto Beetlejuice at one point. At one point, he almost becomes like a carnival ride to like kill these cowboys. It's crazy, but he says, I would have. He says something like, "I would have created lasers in the first day." He's talking about how like, the supreme being was like behind the times when he was creating the Earth and civilization and reality and stuff. He's like, "I would have created lasers, you know, first couple hours, like first day." And he kind of throws his hand back, and you hear some guy get blasted like across the room. He's like, "Ow!" And he's like, "Sorry." It's wonderful. Every time I hear David Warner, I hear Ra's al Ghul from the Batman animated series, and I love that guy. I watch David Warner and everything he's in. Have you seen Time After Time? Or I think it's Time After Time. It's this like H.G. Wells time machine, Jack the Ripper movie, and it was directed by the guy who directed Wrath of Khan, Nicholas Meyer. Man, it's great. And he also wrote. Man, this is getting back. This is like totally circling back to Sherlock Holmes. I totally planned that. He wrote the 7% Solution, who ended up becoming a movie with the guy who played Cagliostro in the Spawn film, and everybody made a big stink about there being a blonde-haired Holmes, and it was pretty awesome. That guy's awesome though. But anyway. I'm digressing all over the place. It's time to wrap it up. Thanks to everyone who stopped back out, and make sure to go to diabolicallyhunting@mail.com with the name of the story or book that you were able to suss out from everything that's currently surrounding me. I can't believe I forgot to mention Malcolm McDowell. He's so awesome in that, because you see him. I don't think all the Malcolm McDowell, like Malcolm McDowell had these heights of wonderful, crazy parts that he had in movies he was in. And then he has really super crappy ones that he's in. But Time After Time is great, because when you remember him as Alex from Clockwork Orange, and then you see him in this kind of, not necessarily like, I would say bookish. He's definitely bookish, but I wouldn't say that he's weak. He's definitely strong-willed and stuff, but he's just he's softer. And seeing him go through like that modern day New York, I think he's in New York, Manhattan maybe, and seeing him discover French fries, pommes frites, he calls them pommes frites. I was actually saying that to Lucy. Everything is working around. This is totally a circle. Life is a circle. And yes, Mr. Gully, totally agree. Malcolm McDowell is the best H.G. Wells in the movies ever. I don't think I've ever seen an H.G. Wells that I found more believable than him. And I turn my friends on that movie whenever I have a chance, because I think it really holds up. Some of the, I mean, who cares? But I mean, some of the they do a lot of optical effects, I think, in that, and I'm a sucker for optical effects, so I love me some Time After Time. Nicholas Meyer, Malcolm McDowell, David Warner, Mary Steenburgen, and Corey Feldman, and a real small part in a museum when he was just a kid. But anyway, this is not a movie podcast. Anyway, I get wrapped up in that stuff. See, TJ was too quick off the mark. If I'd have been here first, I would have had a movie podcast too. But maybe I'll do one. Maybe I'll do one about everything other than horror. Non-horror podcast. I'll be Schmeckles and Schmorer. But anyways, thanks to everyone who came out for episode 0 of the Diabolical Index for December 3rd, 2018. This is where the pages of the Uncanny reside, especially in the Study in Emerald, the Hidden, and the Secret 3. Good luck on the contest. Let me know. Or San Francisco. Damn it. Actually, you know what? I think I had a problem with San Francisco. Huh?
The stuff in the background really important, because like you can't really make out what that black thing is.
Everything's important. What black thing? Oh, this?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move it to the 4 just for a moment so everyone can see it. Everything is important.
I didn't know if we should do like close-up on stuff.
No, you shouldn't do that. But yeah, I think I had that problem with San Francisco last time. I think I had said that Sam Spade was from L.A. or Sam Spade was in San Francisco, I mixed something up with San Francisco. And I got roundly corrected, and I'm glad that I did. But anyhow, thanks for everyone for showing up. I appreciate you still believing in me, and I will do my best to come back strong. And actually, I'm doing a little bit of research into some of the other streaming or into the other kind of repositories that the podcasts end up in, and I'm going to be working towards putting more content out other than the live stream. Maybe some audio only stuff, perhaps some interview stuff, and maybe even going out into the field for maybe a couple other different programs. So we'll see if that actually happens. I tend to bite off more than 3 people can chew, so we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, despite all the shortcomings, despite everything, I have to say with all sincerity that I love all you guys, and thanks for backing me up. And as always, keep it squirrely.
The squirrel was magic!
Huh?
We mute that and you're still going.
Oh.